The snow never stopped falling on Veltrax-7. The wind howled like wild beasts, and the sky above was hidden behind thick white clouds. Ice covered everything, mountains, rivers, even the trees were frozen into statues. It was not a place meant for soft creatures, but Lyra was there. She was a young alien girl, a Mirian. Her skin was soft purple, and her eyes were bright like blue crystals. She wore a thick white coat, but it was already soaked from the blizzard. Her small hands clutched a furry creature close to her chest. It was her pet, Numa, warm, fluffy animal with 2 tails and big round eyes. They were both shaking from the cold. Lyra was part of a science team from her planet. They had come to study Veltrax-7's strange weather and icy land, but something had gone wrong. A snowquake had hit the area. Huge cracks in the ground had opened up. Wind and ice had buried their equipment. The other team members had been far away when it happened. Lyra had been left alone. Alone. Except for Numa. She had tried to call for help using her wristcom, but the storm was too strong. No signal. No sound. Only wind. She had walked for hours, her boots sinking in snow, so deep it reached her knees. Her energy was low. Her fingers were numb. Finally, she found a small cave at the base of a frozen cliff. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. Now she sat inside, her back against the wall, her arms wrapped tightly around Numa, the little creature. Whimpered softly, pressing its warm body close to her. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Just stay with me." The wind screamed outside. Snow blew into the cave, making the cold even worse. Her coat's heating system had failed an hour ago. The backup battery was dead. Came out in white clouds. She looked at Numa. His fur was icy, but he was still alive. Barely Lyra held him tighter. She felt sleepy. So sleepy. She had learned about this feeling in her training cold sleep. When the body is too cold, it gives up. The brain starts to shut down. She shook her head weakly. "No, I can't sleep. I have to stay awake. For Numa." But her eyes kept closing. Her body was heavy. Her thoughts were slow. She started to hum an old Mirian lullaby. The song was soft and warm like a fire in the dark. Then she heard something strange, a sound that didn't belong to the wind. Throom, throom, heavy footsteps. Metal. She opened her eyes. Outside the cave, something was moving. She tried to sit up, but her body refused. She could only turn her head. Slightly, Numa growled weakly in her arms. Then a shadow appeared at the entrance. It was big, too big to be Mirian. A bright light shone from its chest, cutting through the snow like a blade. Then came a voice, deep and clear. "Is someone in?" There, Lyra's heart jumped. That voice was in galactic common. She tried to speak, but her lips were frozen. The figure stepped closer. It was a tall being in a thick black suit covered in armor. The helmet was silver with a blue visor. "Ah!" A glowing red light blinked on. The shoulder. A logo marked the chest plate. United Human Alliance Exploration Corps is a human. Lyra had only seen pictures of humans before. Stories said they were dangerous, wild, always ready for war. But this one knelt beside her gently. "Hey," he said, removing his helmet. Warm air came out as steam. His face was pale with short dark hair and a strong jaw. His eyes were sharp, but kind. "You're freezing." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small gray box. He opened it and took out a heat pack, cracking. It lit up orange and started to glow. He placed it between her and Numa. Lyra felt warmth, real warmth. For the first time in hours, Numa purred. "I'm Commander Jake Rylan," the man said. "Don't worry, you're safe now." Lyra blinked, confused and still half frozen. "Lyra," she managed to say. "My name is Lyra." "Lyra," Jake said. "Let's get you and your little buddy out of this cave," he tapped. His wrist, opening a small holoscreen. He scanned her vitals. "Hypothermia setting in. You're lucky I saw your weak distress beacon." He gently lifted her in his arms, then placed Numa in a warm pouch on his chest. Lyra was too weak to resist. too tired to ask questions. But somehow, she trusted him. The human carried her outside into the snowstorm. His suit had shields against the wind and a built-in heater. She could feel the difference right away. It was like moving from death back to life. He walked carefully across the ice, every step sure and strong. After what felt like hours, they reached a small gray ship. The door slid open, and warm air rushed out. Jake stepped inside and laid Lyra. On a bed, he placed Numa in a soft nest near a heater. Computer. Increase temperature to 38 Celsius, he ordered. Temperature rising, said the soft voice of the ship, AI. Jake knelt beside Lyra. You're going to be okay. Rest now. She wanted to speak, to thank him, to ask him why he helped her, but sleep came first. Not cold sleep, safe sleep, warm, protected, alive. Lyra opened her eyes slowly. Warmth surrounded her. For a moment, she thought it was a dream. Then she felt the soft bed, the gentle hum of a ship, and the steady beat of her own heart. Her body didn't hurt anymore. Her fingers moved. Her skin didn't burn with cold. She sat up, blinking. The lights were dim and warm. She looked around. She was inside a small spaceship. The walls were smooth metal. A screen near her bed showed outside still a world of ice and snow. Then she saw Numa, curled up in a soft padded nest beside a heater. His fur was dry and clean. He was purring, his tails twitching in sleep. Lyra smiled weakly. He had survived. They had both survived. Just then, the door opened with a soft whoosh. The human entered. He wore a gray undersuit now, without his heavy armor. His hair was still damp from snow, but his eyes were sharp and alert. Good, he said. You're awake. Lyra sat up straighter. Her voice was still weak. You saved me. Jake smiled. Yeah, you were freezing. Bad case of hypothermia. Numa too. I got there just in time. She looked down a little shy. Thank you. He walked over and handed her a hot drink in a silver cup. Drink this synth cocoa, it helps with recovery. Lyra sniffed the drink carefully, then took a sip. It was sweet and warm. It made her chest feel full of light. Jake sat on the chair beside her. So Lyra, right? You're Mirian? She nodded. Yes, science team. It's from Miria Prime. Studying the weather here, what happened? She looked down. A snowquake. Away from the others. No signal. What? No signal. Then the storm hit. I found the cave. Jake leaned back. Yeah, this place is brutal. I wasn't supposed to land here either. You weren't? She asked. Nope. I'm from the United Human Alliance, Explorer Corps. I was on my way to a different planet, but my ship's nav system failed. Got caught in the same storm. Crashed a few kilometers from here, so you're stuck too, she said softly. He nodded. For now. My main system was damaged, but there's a backup beacon tower nearby. If we can reach it, we can call for help. Lyra's eyes widened. A tower, I didn't know there was one here. Jake smiled. Most people don't. It's old, hidden under snow, but it still works. Lyra looked down at Numa. He was still sleeping peacefully. Can we wait here, she asked. Jake shook his head. Not too long. My ship's power won't last forever. We've got food and heat for maybe 3 days. After that, it's walking. Time, she nodded slowly. I understand. There was silence for a moment. Then she looked up again. You're not like the stories. Jake raised an eyebrow. What stories? The ones about humans? That you're dangerous? Violent? That you only care about war? Jake sighed. Yeah, I've heard those too. Are they true? She asked carefully. He thought for a moment. Some of them. Humans have done bad things. But we've also done good. We explore. We help. We try to learn. We're not perfect. But we're not monsters. Lyra looked at him closely. You helped? Me and Numa. That means something. Jake smiled. Yeah, well, I don't like watching people die if I can stop it. Suddenly, Numa woke up and stretched, then ran across the floor and jumped into Lyra's lap. She laughed, hugging him tightly. He missed you, Jake said with a grin. Numa is special, she replied. He never leaves me. Jake stood up and checked a panel on the wall. We're in a safe zone for now. But another storm is coming in 20 hours. We need to plan our next move. Lyra put Numa down gently. I'll help. Jake turned to her. Are you strong enough? She stood up slowly, a little shaky, but steady. Yes, you saved me. Now I want to help you. He nodded. Good. Then let me show you the map. They walked to a table near the wall. Jake touched the surface, and a 3D map popped up. Mountains, snowfields, red danger zones filled the air above the table. The beacon tower is here, Jake said, pointing to a spot. About 7 kilometers north. The terrain is rough, ice cracks, snow pits, and maybe wild creatures. Lyra nodded. We've seen some of those. We call them chill beasts. Big, fast, and hard to see in snow. Jake looked serious. Then we need to be careful. I know a safe path, Lyra said. My team used it before the storm. It's longer, but safer. Jake smiled. Perfect. We'll follow your lead. Just then, the lights flickered. Jake checked the panel again. Power's getting weaker. We've got maybe 30 hours of heat left. Lyra looked out the small window. The snow had slowed, but the clouds were still thick. Tomorrow, she said, we go tomorrow morning. Agreed, Jake replied. Tonight we rest, eat, prepare. He handed her a pack of dried food. She tasted it carefully. Not bad, she said. Earth snacks, Jake said. Used to eat them during training. They ate in silence for a while. Then Lyra looked up. You said you were an explorer. Why come to a place like this? Jake shrugged, looking for answers. Maps, lost tech, old signals. Sometimes peace. I like the quiet. Lyra smiled a little. It's quiet here. Too quiet. Jake looked at her. You're brave, you know. Most people wouldn't have lasted that long in the storm. She blushed slightly. I knew he gave me a reason to live. Jake nodded. Sometimes that's all it takes. That night, Lyra slept in the warm bed. Numa beside her, Jake sat in the pilot's chair, watching the storm outside. Two strangers from different worlds, now partners. In survival, tomorrow, the real journey would begin. The next morning came slowly on Veltrack 7. The sky was still gray, and the air was sharp and cold. Snow fell gently now, like feathers, but Lyra and Jake knew the storm would return soon. They had one chance to reach the beacon tower before it. Hit inside the small human ship. The two prepared for their journey. Jake helped Lyra put on a thicker coat from his survival kit. It was made for humans, but close enough in size. He adjusted the belt and checked the seals. Not bad, he said. With a smile, You look ready for war, Lyra chuckled. I don't want war. I just want warmth. Numa sat nearby, his fur fluffed up and his eyes alert. Jake opened a small backpack and placed Numa gently inside. The inner pouch was soft, heated, and save for the little creature, he'll ride with me, Jake said. That way he stays warm and hidden. Lyra nodded. Good. He hates the cold. They packed dried food, extra power cells, a flare gun, 2 heat packs, and a small medical kit. Jake also brought a laser cutter, just in case they needed to break through ice or face danger. At the door, Jake looked at Lyra one last time. Once we leave, we can't turn back. You sure you're ready? Lyra took a deep breath. Yes. Let's go. The ship door slid open with a hiss. Cold wind rushed in. Snow hit their faces like tiny knives. Jake activated his suit's shield. A thin blue energy field wrapped around them, blocking most of the wind. Stay close, he said. They stepped out onto the ice. The land was white, endless, and silent. They moved slowly across the snowfield. Lyra led the way, remembering the path her team once used. She looked for signs, ridges, buried rocks, safe places to step. Jake followed behind, checking his scanner and watching the sky. For the first hour, all was quiet. Then they reached a wide, flat area where the snow was packed tightly. Jake stopped. Wait, Lyra froze. What is it? Jake knelt and touched the ground. His scanner beeped. This is a thin ice layer. Or underneath is a deep pit. We go around. Lyra nodded and turned left. They walked carefully, circling the danger zone. Suddenly, Numa growled from inside the bag. Jake paused. "What's wrong, buddy?" Lyra's eyes scanned the snow. Then she saw it. Movement. A shape under the snow. Long, fast. Jake. Chill beast. The creature burst from the ground with a roar. It was twice the size of a man, covered in white scales with ice-sharp claws and glowing blue eyes. Jake pulled Lyra behind him. "Back up," the chill beast lunged. Jake fired his laser cutter not as a weapon, but a warning. Red beam of light flashed past the creature's face. It hissed and backed away. "Lyra, use the heat pack," Jake shouted. She reached into her coat and pulled out the heat pack. She cracked it, and it glowed bright orange. She threw it on the ground. The chill beast growled, confused by the sudden warmth. Jake grabbed a flare gun and fired. A bright red flare exploded in the air, blinding the creature. It screeched and disappeared into the snow. They didn't wait. They ran. They reached a frozen cliffside and ducked into a small overhang. Lyra panted. That was close. Jake checked Numa. The little pet was scared, but unharmed. "They hate heat," Jake said. "We'll keep the rest of the packs ready." Lyra looked at him. "You stayed calm, even with that thing coming at us?" Jake smiled. "It comes with training and fear. Fear helps you think fast." They rested for a few minutes, then continued. The path grew harder. Wind picked up again. Snow hit harder. Lyra's feet ached. Her body was tired, but she kept walking. She remembered the cave. The freezing night. She would never go through that again, after another hour. They saw it, the beacon tower. It stood tall, half buried in snow and ice. Its top lights were dead, but the structure was solid. "There it is," Jake said. "Let's get inside." Reached the door, was frozen shut. Jake pulled out the laser cutter and began melting the ice. Lyra helped chip away the rest with a metal rod. Finally, the door opened with a loud creak. Inside, it was cold, but safe from wind. They stepped in. Jake turned on his wrist light. The room was small, with a control panel, a generator, and a long dead heater. Jake walked to the panel and connected a power cell. The panel lit up. Green lights blinked. Soft humming sound filled the room. "Yes," Jake said. "The system is working." Lyra smiled weakly. "Will it call help?" Jake pressed a few buttons. A blue hologram appeared. "Backup beacon activated," the machine said. "Signal broadcasting to all nearby systems." "It's done," Jake said. "Help is on the way." Lyra leaned against the wall, tears in her eyes. "We made it." Jake nodded. "You were strong?" Suddenly, a loud sound came from outside. A deep growl. Lyra froze. It followed us. The chill beast had returned. Jake looked out a small viewing window. "It's circling." "Oh, we can't fight it again," Lyra said. "We have no more flares." Jake checked his pack. One heat pack left. He cracked it and handed it to Lyra. "I'll distract it. You stay hidden." "No." Lyra grabbed his arm. "You've saved me. I'm not letting you die now." Jake looked at her. "We'll do it together." They placed the heat pack near the door, then stood to the sides. Holding metal rods, the chill beast slammed into the door. Once, twice, the third time. It broke through. It rushed in, but stopped when it hit the heat. It screeched in pain. Jake and Lyra struck fast. Jake hitting its leg, Lyra its side. The creature stumbled back, then fled into the snow, howling. Silence returned. They dropped their weapons, breathing hard. "We did it," Jake said. Lyra laughed softly. "We really did." They sat down, tired but alive. Hours passed. Then a voice came from the panel. "Rescue ship inbound. Estimated arrival, 40 minutes." Lyra smiled, holding Numa in her arms. Jake looked at her. "You're more than just a scientist." "Back. You're more than just a soldier." They both laughed. They had faced ice monsters and death, but they survived, together. The rescue ship did not come, at least, not on time. Lyra and Jake waited in the small beacon tower, eyes fixed on the small screens and the bleak, snowy world outside. The storm had passed, but the sky was still heavy with clouds. Signals from the ship were faint to faint. Jake paced, his face tense. Something's wrong. I should have been here by now. Lyra wrapped Numa tighter in her coat, feeling the small creature's steady heartbeat. What do we do? Jake ran his fingers through his hair. We can't wait any longer. My ship's power is almost gone. If rescue won't come, we'll have to walk back to my crash site, 6 kilometers southwest. Lyra looked out the frozen window, her breath fogging the glass. The thought of walking in the cold was scary. But staying here wasn't safe either. She nodded. We try. Together. They packed their gear quickly. Numa was settled in his heated pouch on Jake's back. Lyra carried the remaining supplies as small pack with food, water, and the last heat pack. Outside, the wind had softened, but the cold was still sharp. They began their long trek across the white wasteland. At first, the journey was slow but steady. Lyra led. Scanning the ground for cracks and weak ice, Jake followed closely. Checking his scanner for signs of trouble, Numa peeked out from the pouch, his eyes wide and alert. Hours passed. The sun hung low, a pale circle behind thick clouds. The cold was biting. Frost formed on their coats and faces. Jake's breathing grew heavy. Suddenly, the ground beneath him cracked loudly. Jake grabbed Lyra's arm. Careful. They stepped back, eyes searching. Below the thin ice was a dark crevassed deep, frozen crack in the earth. Lyra pulled out a small climbing rope from her pack. We cross here, she said, tying one end to a nearby rock. Jake checked the other end. Ready? Together, they crossed carefully. Numa stayed in his pouch, silent but watching. The next challenge came quickly. A fierce wind whipped through the valley, pushing snow and ice against their faces. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Lyra shielded her eyes and tried to stay close to Jake. The wind howled around them like angry spirits. Suddenly, Jake stumbled. His foot slipped on ice. He fell hard. Lyra rushed to help him up. Are you okay? Jake winced, touching his leg. It's bruised. I think I twisted it. Lyra's heart beat faster. We need to stop. Can't walk like that. Jake smiled weakly. I'm okay. I can manage. But Lyra wasn't convinced. She found an old sled in the snow, probably left by past explorers. Here, she said, we'll use this. They lifted Jake onto the sled. Lyra pulled with all her strength while Numa peeked from his pouch. The sled slid over ice and snow. Lyra's muscles burned. But she didn't stop. Hours turned into a long, slow march. Night fell. The stars were hidden by clouds. Cold seeped into their bones. But they kept going. At one point, a faint growl broke the silence. Lyra froze. Jake reached for his laser cutter out of the snow. A pair of glowing eyes appeared. A chill beast. It moved low and fast. Jake fired a warning shot. The creature hissed and circled. Lyra grabbed a heat pack and threw it near the beast. It hissed, then fled. Jake sighed with relief. That's the third. One today? Lyra nodded. They're protecting this land. Finally, after what felt like an endless night, they saw lights in the distance. It was Jake's crashed ship, half buried in snow, but still there. Lyra smiled weakly. We made it. Jake groaned softly. Almost done. They moved closer. Jake's leg hurt badly now. Lyra helped him inside the ship. The cabin was cold and dark. She found the power console and looked in a battery. The lights flickered on. The ship's heater started. To hum, Numa jumped out and ran around happily. Jake sat down heavily. Lyra sat beside him. We're safe, she said. Jake nodded, closing his eyes. Then the ship's communicator crackled. Rescue team inbound. Ida, 10 minutes. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. They had survived. Together. The sound of engines filled the cold air outside the ship. Lyra's heart beat fast. She stood by the window watching a large craft break through the clouds. Bright lights shone on the ice as the rescue ship landed softly nearby. Jake was awake. Now, sitting up on the cot, "They're here," he said, his voice tired but relieved. Lyra held Numa close. The little creature twitched his ears. Sensing the change, the ship's door opened with a hiss. 2 figures in white and blue suits stepped inside. One was a tall human, the other a slender Mirian scientist. Commander Rylan, the human called Jake, stood and nodded. "We've been searching for days," the human said. "Glad we found you in time." The Mirian woman smiled warmly at Lyra. "We were worried about you." Lyra smiled back. "I am safe now." The rescue team helped them out of the ship. Lyra took deep breaths of fresh, cold air. The storm had passed for good. The rescue ship was larger than Jake's, filled with warmth, food, and medicine. Lyra and Jake were treated for cold and exhaustion. Numa got a special heated carrier as they rested. The Mirian scientist talked to Lyra. "Your story is important," she said. "It shows how our 2 peoples can work together." Lyra nodded. "Jake saved me. And Numa." Jake smiled. "It was teamwork." Outside, the snow was melting slowly under the sun. The rescue ship's captain invited Jake and Lyra to speak to the Mirian Council and Human Alliance representatives. It was a chance to build peace and friendship. Before leaving the ice planet, Jake and Lyra stood together, looking out at the endless white world. Jake put his hand on Lyra's shoulder. "You're stronger than you think." Lyra smiled. "So are you." Numa jumped into her arms. Jake looked at the small creature and laughed. "Looks like you have a good friend." "We do," Lyra said. As the rescue ship lifted off, they waved goodbye. Both knew this was not the end. It was the start of something new.